Welcome to this edition of Northwest Real Estate Forum. I'm your host, Patricia Wangsness. Our passion is to help you understand the art, science, and timing of real estate by bringing you relevant topics and experts with up-to-date information impacting your biggest asset, your home. Joining us today is Dorothy Ennes. Dorothy is Director of Property Management at Coldwell Bain and has been a licensed real estate broker and professional property manager since 1982, almost 30 years. Dorothy started the property management division at Coldwell Bain in 2004, and she and her team have built a division which handles single-family homes and individual condominium rentals from Tacoma to Anacortes. Welcome, Dorothy.
Thank you, Patricia. It's a pleasure.
So we have a market that's been sort of up and down for quite a period of time, and sellers are disappointed in the price that they might have to sell their home for. So some of the sellers are choosing to rent, and we suggest, David and I suggest, that they talk to a professional about renting a home because it's not as simple as it seems. So what's some of the advice that you could give to a seller that's important?
We're seeing a lot of what I call inadvertent landlords in the current rental market, and those are owners who typically would be selling but are renting for those reasons. One of the biggest issues that we see is that those owners aren't investment owners, so they still have an emotional tie to the home, and instead of treating it as a business, which is what it becomes, they're still keeping that emotional tie, and they want to keep it their home, and they want to choose who lives in their house. My first recommendation to owners is, how are you going to decide whether or not somebody's qualified to rent your home? You need to have established criteria. Fair housing laws say you have to apply the same standards across the board. How do you do that if you don't have an established criteria? You need to know what it is you're going to choose as a basis for deciding whether or not somebody can rent your home. That's the first rule.
So are you talking about an income cap, or are you talking about smokers or pets, things like that?
Income tax is one of them, but let's say somebody has 3 late payments versus somebody
credit check. Okay.
Versus somebody who's got a collection account. How do those balance? My recommendation is use a third-party screening company. Then you've got your established criteria in writing, and you make sure that you're applying the same standards across the board.
So David and I own 2 rentals, and
Correct.
we always have your company now do all of the screening, because that way we don't have to handle confidential information, because that's another big important thing.
Absolutely.
If somebody takes an application, they have social security numbers, they have payment information, they have bank records, and should there be a problem down the road, there may be a problem for them, right?
Absolutely. In order for us to use a third-party screening company, another party had to come out and check our office and make sure that we had secure filing cabinets, that we had a shredding machine, that we're a licensed business. I mean, a whole series of things that we had to be checked for. And there are requirements as far as how you protect those documents in order to prevent identity theft, which is a huge issue these days.
So let's also talk about a lease. You know, if somebody doesn't know who's going to be renting their home, they have to have a formal lease, and that has to comply with some state regulations. Even if it's a friend, you're still a landlord, and you have a tenant that has rights and privileges.
Absolutely. We just took over 7 properties that have been held by a family trust. And it was one of those things where one person handles it one year, another person handles it another year. And now we're down the line, and we've got tenants in houses who don't have leases, nobody can find the lease does not conform with state law, there's no move-in inspection, there are all kinds of issues. And these can end up resulting in the tenant trashes the house. And you have no rights because you didn't do the paperwork right in the first place. So it's absolutely a huge issue.
So, okay, so that's what a landlord should do. What are the biggest mistakes that you advise, somebody, or what can we share with our audience, the biggest mistakes that they make so that they can avoid that?
From the very first, again, going back to the screening, is to make sure you do the screening. You want to do an absolutely thorough screening, but you want to make sure that you're adhering to fair housing laws. One of the things that we see is landlords who are inadvertently discriminating against tenants. For instance, we had an owner who had a houseboat. They didn't want children in the houseboat because they were worried about their safety. But children are a protected class. You can't say no, even if you think you're doing it for their best interests. You can't say no to roommates. You're saying, I don't want a bunch of kids living in my house turning it into a party house. But familial status is a protected class. And being single is a familial status. You can't say no. There was a huge case in Bellingham several years ago where a landlord turned down a family of 6 and rented to a family of 5 instead, and there was $30,000 in fines imposed. So again, that's going back to establishing those criteria up front.
So the bottom line is you need to know the law, whether you're an inadvertent landlord or a professional landlord, and somebody like you in property management is the best source, correct?
Absolutely.
Terrific.
It used to be a lot easier. When I first started, it was more simple. And it's a lot more complicated now. It's a lot harder.
Yeah. Well, and in these days when people want to rent instead of sell, they need to know, because ignorance of the law is no excuse.
Absolutely.
Thanks very much, Dorothy, for coming. We'll have you back for more information.
Thanks, Patricia.
Thanks for watching this edition of Northwest Real Estate Forum. Whether you are buying, selling, or sitting on the sidelines, keep watching for important information on topics that are impacting your biggest asset, your home. To learn more about this and other shows, please visit us at northwestrealestateforum.com. While you're there, be sure to order your free copy of the Buyer's Guide and the Seller's Guide for great ideas on how to get the best out of buying and selling your home. I'm your host, Patricia Wangsness. See you next time.